The Vatican issued a very brief statement from the Holy See press office saying it was welcoming the unanimous decision to overturn the Cardinal's verdict, but also said at the same time that it was reaffirming its commitment to protecting children and pursuing clergy sexual abuse perpetrators. So kind of a two-handed statement there.
Yeah, a bit of a bet each way. The Pope was quite strong a little earlier in the day in a mass online that he gave, where he referenced people who suffer unjust sentences because people were after them. Were people reading into that was potentially a statement on George Pell?
Yeah, so before his mass this morning at the Vatican's Domus Santa Marta, where he lives, which is being live streamed during this time of the pandemic, the Pope had referenced Catholics living the season of Lent, in which we remember Jesus being persecuted even though he was innocent. And the Pope said he wanted to pray today for all of those who have suffered injustice or unjust persecution. And it appeared the Pope might have been referring to Cardinal Pell. He didn't mention the Cardinal by name, but the Mass came only a few hours after news of the overturning of the verdict. And so obviously people here and sexual abuse survivors are wondering exactly what the Pope meant to say with that statement.
And given the Vatican was due to pursue its own investigation, do you think that's where it's now going to rest?
Well, what's interesting is that the statement from the Holy See press office today notably did not mention that Vatican's own investigation, the canonical investigation into the allegations against Cardinal Pell. So at this point, that question remains open. The Vatican had announced several years ago that there would be a canonical investigation of these matters. At this point, we don't know if that's ongoing or not.
What do you think now, with the prospect of civil cases still looming, might be George Pell's future within the Church?
Well, Cardinal Pell is 78 years old. He will turn 79 in June. His position at the Vatican has been filled. He had been the prefect for the Secretariat of the Economy. The Pope filled that role at the end of last year. There's no position here for Cardinal Pell to return to. Normally in the Church, once a cardinal reaches the age of 80, they are retired. They don't hold any new roles. So it looks to me as if Cardinal Pell is looking at kind of a period of retirement now.
Yeah. And what do you think his legacy might be ongoing? Is it an uncomfortable one for the Vatican?
Well, certainly this has not been an easy period for the Vatican or for the Pope. For a cardinal to be convicted like this in a court in his home country is unprecedented, unusual, and certainly shows, not just in Australia but around the world, courts are willing to prosecute cases where they have evidence of wrongdoing by any person, a priest, a bishop, or a cardinal.
Have you been able to access broader response given the COVID-19 lockdown?
Yeah, so here in Italy, we've been on lockdown for 20-some days, which means we're not allowed to leave our homes or our apartments except to go to the grocery store or the pharmacy. So we're not able today, for instance, to go to the Vatican or to meet with sources to talk about the Vatican's possible response. All we can really do is speak via phone or internet connection, and that's not always the best scenario in terms of when you're trying to get someone to tell you kind of what's going on behind the scenes.
And given that there was this suspended investigation within the Vatican, what is your sense of whether there would be some people that think that there would still that should still take its course?
It's very unclear to me right now. I think we're going to have to wait for some clarification from the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which would be in charged with taking up this case. At this point, it had been announced, it had been said it was put on hold, and now we don't know if it's still going forward or if they're going to set it aside entirely. What
are your thoughts about how the Pope is going to continue what had been the beginning of an undertaking of seeking justice for victims of sexual abuse?
Well, certainly Pope Francis in the 6 years of his papacy has really tackled this issue in different ways. He's been under fire on some respects in terms of whether or not he's been handling it as a global crisis, as serious as it needs to be handled. But certainly in the past year, 18 months, he's been very serious about this. He held a first-of-its-kind summit in February 2019 with all the presidents of the world's bishops' conferences. He's issued 3 or 4 different decrees in the past year addressing a number of different issues. So for sexual abuse survivors who are looking for real cultural change in the Catholic Church, they've seen some of that, but certainly the Pope's words this morning, I think, will be hard to understand by some who understandably think that there was something for Cardinal Pell to answer for, and it's hard to say exactly whether he was treated fairly or not.
Joshua, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Certainly. Thank you for having me.